The apple crumble I was carrying was still radiating warmth from the car's heater. I'd just driven 9 hours, pushing through a blizzard, all to be on time for Christmas dinner. When I stepped into the dining room, my boots trailed melted snow across the polished hardwood floor. The table was flawless. My mother's heirloom china was out, the silver was gleaming, and my sister Sophie's new fiancé, Mark, was sitting in my chair. The confusion must have been plain on my face. My mother Helen turned from the stove, wiping her hands on her apron. She offered a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Clara, darling, you made it." I just tilted my chin toward the table. My seat. "Oh, right," she said, bustling past me to grab a pair of salad tongs. "We had to rearrange things. It's just the core family this year, you understand?" Core family. I looked over at Mark, a man I'd met on exactly 2 prior occasions. He was laughing at some joke my father had just told. I looked back at the empty spot where my place setting should have been. My mother hadn't just forgotten to set a place for me. She had given mine away. I was home, but I was not welcome. Before we get any further into this, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment down below to let me know where in the world you're watching from. I was still just standing there in the entryway, my arms starting to ache from holding the apple crumble, which by now had probably cooled to lukewarm. The warmth from my 9-hour drive had completely vanished, replaced by the damp chill of melting snow seeping into my coat. The house looked like a magazine cover. It was always a magazine cover for Christmas. My mother, Helen, was the conductor of this holiday orchestra, and this was her grand symphony. Pine garlands and rich velvet ribbons were draped over every available surface. Frank Sinatra was crooning about a white Christmas from the speakers tucked away in the living room. I could smell the deep, savory scent of the roasting turkey, which mingled with the cinnamon from the cider simmering on the stove. It was a perfect, seamless, impenetrable illusion of holiday cheer. I spotted the chipped reindeer mugs on the kitchen counter, each filled with that same warm cider. My sister Sophie and I used to argue over who got the one with the slightly broken antler. I remember buying that set at a post-holiday clearance sale a decade ago, thinking they were charmingly tacky. Now they were just props in a scene. Helen glided past me. She didn't walk, she glided, as if she were perpetually on stage. She held a wooden spoon like a scepter, pointing it toward a bowl of green beans. "Sophie, honey, give this a taste. Does it need more seasoning?" Sophie, my younger sister, was leaning gracefully against the counter. She looked radiant. Her hair was perfectly styled, her sweater a soft, expensive-looking cashmere I didn't recognize, and she was laughing at something Mark, her fiancé, had just whispered to her. She was clearly the star of this production. Mark, the man occupying my chair, was the exciting new addition to the cast. And I was nothing. I was the person who'd shown up late and walked in on the final dress rehearsal. Sophie dipped a delicate finger into the beans. "It's perfect, Mom. Everything's perfect." She finally glanced my way, her smile tightening almost imperceptibly. "Oh, Clara, hi. Your hair is all wet." She made no move to hug me. She didn't ask a single question about my drive. She just stated an obvious fact. My hair was wet. I was an inconvenience. I was melting all over her mother's clean floor. I forced a smile that felt like stretching cold plastic. "It's snowing pretty hard out there." The drive was long. "Well, you're here now," my father, Robert, boomed from his seat in the dining room. He was at the head of the table, already working on a glass of scotch. He raised it vaguely in my direction. "Good to see you, Clara." He didn't get up. He just offered his easy, non-committal smile and immediately turned his attention back to Mark. I shifted the weight of the crumble in my hands. It was getting heavy. Where should I put this? Need any help in the kitchen? This was my old familiar script. I was the helper. I was the one who always mashed the potatoes, refilled the water glasses, and spent an hour scrubbing the roasting pan long after everyone else had collapsed on the couch. It was the role I knew how to play, the one that always earned me a tired, "Thank God for Clara," from my mom around 11 p.m. My mother didn't even turn around. She was now fussing over the gravy, her back pointedly toward me. "Oh, we're all set, sweetheart. Sophie and Mark handled everything this morning. It's just core family, so it's much easier this year. You know how it is." There it was again, that same phrase. It's just core family. This time, the words didn't just sting, they landed like small, sharp pieces of gravel. Core family. Mark, a man who had been a part of our lives for less than a year, was core. I, the firstborn daughter, the one who'd paid for their new furnace last winter when the old one died, was not. I stood there, frozen, trying to make sense of the logic, but it wasn't logic. It was a message. A sudden sharp clarity washed over me. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't some simple mistake. This was a calculated decision. They had planned their core family Christmas, and I clearly hadn't made the cut. My assumption that I was not only welcome, but expected, that was my error, not theirs. I looked at the table again. Mark was sitting exactly where I always sat, at the end closest to the kitchen. It was the chair with the slightly wobbly leg that I always meant to remind Dad to fix. It was my seat, and he was in it. Sophie let out another laugh, a high, tinkling sound that suddenly grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. She was showing Mark something on her phone. They were the perfect happy couple. My mom was the perfect happy hostess. My dad was the perfect happy patriarch. I was the only piece that didn't fit. I was the wet coat, the messy hair, the unwanted dessert. "Clara, don't just stand there in the doorway." "You're letting in a draft," my mother said, still without looking at me. Her voice was bright, but the edge was sharp as a knife. I swallowed past a lump in my throat that felt hard and painful. "Right. Sorry." I finally moved, feeling like I was wading through thick mud. I walked over to the small, cluttered side table by the staircase, the one buried under junk mail and old magazines. I found a tiny, clear space and set down the apple crumble. It looked sad and out of place, sitting on a stack of home and garden catalogs. I didn't take my coat off. I couldn't. Taking off my coat would feel like an admission of acceptance. It would feel like I was agreeing to stay, accepting this new, diminished role. The daughter who wasn't core family. The daughter who stands in the corner. My mother's words echoed in my head. It's much easier this year. Easier. Was I difficult? I thought about it. I was the one who flew home for every single crisis. I was the one who'd fronted the down payment for Sophie's first car. I was the one who discreetly balanced my father's checkbook whenever he complained that the numbers weren't adding up. I didn't think I was difficult. I thought I was helpful. But now I saw the truth. Helpful wasn't the same as family. Helpful was just useful, and maybe this year they just didn't need my particular brand of help. Sophie had Mark now. He was the new, shiny, helpful person. He could lift the heavy turkey. He could laugh at Dad's tired old jokes. He was a fiancé, a future husband. He was progress. What was I? I was 35. Single, living 2,000 miles away in Portland with a demanding job. In their eyes, I wasn't a person. I was a solution to their problems. a financial consultant in my life as well as my work. And if there were no problems to be solved, I had no function. I pulled my coat tighter around myself. The illusion of the perfect Christmas hadn't just cracked. It had completely shattered. The garlands suddenly looked cheap. Frank Sinatra's voice sounded tinny and thin, and the rich smell of the turkey now made my stomach turn. This was exile. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't involve slammed doors or raised voices. It was quiet. It was polite. It was my mother, smiling sweetly at me while telling me I didn't belong, calling me sweetheart all the while. It was the most honest thing she had said to me in years. I backed away from the dining room, retreating toward the small, dark alcove by the front door where the coat rack stood, a tangled mess of scarves and winter jackets. I leaned against the wall, pulling myself into the shadows, pretending to be absorbed in my phone. I brushed imaginary snow from my coat, anything to give my hands something to do, a reason to look down, a reason to be separate. From here, I could see them. I was a ghost. I was the audience for a play I was supposed to be a part of. My eyes scanned the dining room table one more time, desperately searching for any sign that I had been expected. There was nothing. The table was set for 6. Mom, Dad, Sophie, Mark, and... Wait, my Uncle David was there. I hadn't even noticed him. He was sitting on the other side of Mark, deep in conversation with my father, and next to him sat a woman I didn't recognize, with platinum blonde hair and a loud, braying laugh. I did the mental arithmetic. Mom, Dad, Sophie, Mark, Uncle David, and the new woman. 6 people. They hadn't just run out of space. They hadn't just rearranged. They had constructed an entirely new table dynamic, a new inner circle, and I was on the outside. My mother's line about core family was a lie. It was a flimsy, cruel excuse. The real reason was much simpler. They just preferred a table without me. My uncle's new girlfriend, I assumed that's who she was, had a place setting. A real place setting with the heirloom china and polished silver. I looked for my name card. Sophie loved making name cards with her perfect loopy calligraphy. I saw Mark written in gold ink. I saw Linda. That must be the new girlfriend. I saw Mom, Dad, Sophie, David. There was no Clara. I hadn't just been forgotten. I had been actively uninvited without anyone bothering to tell me. I glanced under the enormous Christmas tree in the living room, a beautiful fir dripping with tinsel and ornaments from my childhood. The base of the tree was a mountain of brightly wrapped gifts. I could see the ones I'd mailed ahead. A large box for my parents containing a new espresso machine, a smaller, perfectly wrapped box for Sophie with the designer handbag she'd been dropping hints about for months, a bottle of expensive single malt scotch for my dad. I had even sent a gift card for Mark as a welcome to the family gesture. I scanned the pile for anything with my name on it. There were a few small, leftover-looking gifts shoved toward the back. Maybe those were for me. It was clear they hadn't waited for me to arrive. Or even worse, they had my gifts and just hadn't put them out. It felt like such a petty, deliberate slight. You weren't here when we opened presents, so you get nothing. Except I was here. I was standing right here. Mark laughed again, a loud, confident sound that echoed through the room. He was telling some story about his last quarter at the investment firm. My father was listening, rapt, nodding along, his face filled with an approval I had spent my entire life trying to earn. I had to graduate at the top of my class, land the high-paying job, and manage my money flawlessly just to get a distracted, "That's nice, Clara." Mark just had to show up, be male, and be engaged to Sophie, and he was handed the keys to the kingdom. He was rehearsing for the role of son-in-law, and my father was eating it up. I tried to catch Sophie's eye. I just stared at her, willing her to look at me, to give me some kind of sign, a small shrug of apology, even just an, "I'm sorry, Mom is being crazy" look. We used to be a team, united against our mother's rigid perfectionism. She felt me looking. I know she did. She fidgeted with her napkin. She took a long, slow sip of her wine. She turned her body slightly, angling herself more toward Mark and away from the doorway where I was standing. She had made her choice. She chose the new family, the perfect table, the laughing fiancé. She chose them, and in choosing them, she had to unchoose me. That was the betrayal that cut the deepest. My mother was who she was. My father was weak, but Sophie was my sister. And then the realization hit me. It wasn't a thought, it was a physical blow, like a bucket of ice water dumped into my gut. I looked at the room again, but this time, I saw it through my financial consultant lens. I saw a ledger, the new garlands and ribbons. I had paid for those. My mother had accidentally used my card on Amazon. The perfectly roasted turkey. I'd sent them a $600 grocery gift card just last week. Just to help out, I'd said. The wine Mark was now drinking? It was from the case I'd had delivered for my father's birthday. Sophie's cashmere sweater? I knew that brand. It was expensive. I quickly glanced at my phone, at our shared credit card app. Yep, there it was. Nordstrom, $480. 3 days ago. The very roof over their heads? I had been helping with the mortgage payments for 2 years, ever since my dad's company downsized and his hours were cut. It wasn't help. I was paying it, this whole perfect, beautiful Christmas. I had funded it. I had paid for the very knives that were now being plunged into my back. I wasn't family. I was a function. I was the family bank. I was the safety net. I was the reliable, boring single daughter with the good job who could absorb all the costs. I was a utility, like the water or the electricity. You only notice it when it stops working. You don't invite the power company to Christmas dinner. You just expect it to keep the lights on. For all these years, I thought I was buying their love. I thought my generosity, my willingness to solve their problems, made me essential. And it did. But I had confused essential with loved. I was essential in the way a plumber is essential. You call them when there's a problem, you pay them for their services, and then you show them the door. You don't give them your seat at the dinner table. I felt suddenly overwhelmingly stupid. All the signs had been there for years. The Clara could you just phone calls, the way every conversation eventually turned to money, to what was broken, to what Sophie deserved. I wasn't a ghost. A ghost has a history. A ghost is missed. I was just a vacancy, and now I was an awkward, inconvenient, filled vacancy. Mark was the new, better tenant. I looked down at my phone. The screen was dark, reflecting my own face back at me. Wet hair, pale skin, shocked eyes. The ghost at the feast? No, I thought, not anymore. I wasn't going to stand in the shadows and watch my own erasure. I wasn't going to beg for scraps from a feast that I had paid for. The clarity was sharp, cold, and absolute. I finally understood. My mother's voice, bright and brittle, cut through the room. "All right, everyone, let's sit. Let's sit. The food is getting cold. Mark, honey, you're at my right hand." There was a scraping of chairs, a rustle of cloth napkins, a low murmur of laughter. Everyone moved in unison, a choreographed dance for which I didn't know the steps. They settled in. My father, my uncle, his new girlfriend, my sister, and Mark. My mother stood at the head of the table, beaming like the queen of her perfect tiny kingdom, and I was still by the door. I remained standing. For a split second, I wondered if anyone would even notice. If my mother would pause, her hand halfway to the gravy boat, and say, "Clara, for heaven's sake, what are you doing?" Go grab a chair from the kitchen. I waited for that flicker of recognition, that moment of acknowledgement. Nothing. Not a single person looked my way. No one saw me. I'd become so good at being in the background, at being the support structure, that I had literally become invisible. They looked right through me. My presence was a non-issue. My absence, it seemed, was the preferred state. The decision was made. It wasn't even a decision, really. It was just the next logical step. You don't stay where you're not wanted. My body moved before my brain fully caught up. I was strangely calm. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I was just done. The emotional circuits had overloaded and shut down completely. All that was left was a quiet, cold certainty. I walked over to the side table. The apple crumble was still there, sitting on the stack of magazines. My offering, my ticket of admission. It looked pathetic. I picked up my car keys, which I'd dropped next to it. My purse was already on my shoulder. I didn't turn to face the table. I just spoke to the room, my voice quiet but clear. It didn't even sound like my own voice. "You guys start without me." My mother, who had been instructing my father on how to carve the turkey, paused. She turned, her head tilted with a slight frown of annoyance. She hadn't really heard the words, just the interruption of her scene. "What, dear?" I turned then. I looked directly at her. Her perfect hostess smile was stapled firmly in place. I said it again, a little louder. "You guys start." I watched her process this. She was annoyed. I was breaking the scene, the actor who had forgotten their line. She waved a hand in a dismissive, airy gesture. "Oh, of course. We'll save you some crumble." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. "We'll save you some crumble." The crumble I made. The crumble I carried for 9 hours. The crumble that was my only contribution, sitting rejected on the mail table. She didn't get it. She didn't understand that I was leaving. She thought I was going to the bathroom or maybe up to my old room to sulk. She was already turning back to the table, back to her real family. "Now, Robert, the dark meat for Mark." I didn't say anything else. There was nothing left to say. She'll save me some crumble. I opened the front door. The blast of cold air was a relief. It was clean. It didn't smell of roasted turkey and lies. I stepped out onto the porch. The snow was falling heavily now, thick white flakes that muffled the entire world. The door clicked shut behind me. I didn't slam it. I wasn't angry. I was escaping. I walked down the icy pathway, each step making a solid, crunchy sound in the silence. The fresh snow was already covering my own footprints from when I'd arrived. I was being erased, and the world was helping. I got to my car, which was now covered in a fresh blanket of white. I stood there for a moment, keys in my hand. I could hear the faint sound of Jingle Bell Rock coming from inside the house. I looked back. Through the front window, past the frosted glass and the wreath my mother had hung, I could see them. The dining room was bright and warm, like a scene inside a snow globe, a perfect little world. They were all there, and they were laughing. My mother had her hands clasped, watching Mark take his first bite of turkey. My father was pouring more wine. Sophie was leaning in, her face bright with adoration for her new fiancé. My absence hadn't caused a single ripple. It hadn't even caused a pause in the conversation. They were laughing. They were already laughing. My empty space hadn't been an empty space at all. It was just space. My leaving hadn't created a hole. The performance was just as good without me. In fact, it looked like it was even better. The chair I was supposed to be in was empty, but my place was filled. Mark had filled it. The new girlfriend had filled it. The laughter filled it. I finally understood. I could have stood in that doorway all night, and they would have simply eaten around me. I could have screamed at the top of my lungs, and they would have told me to be quiet. I wasn't just uninvited. I was unnecessary. I got in the car. The seat was cold against my back. I turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life, a low, reliable sound. Thank God for my reliable car. I switched on the windshield wipers. They scraped away the thick snow, revealing the dark, empty road ahead. I put the car in reverse and pulled out of the driveway. I didn't look back again. I didn't drive the 9 hours back to Portland. I couldn't. The snow was getting too thick, and I was just too tired. My hands were finally starting to shake. I drove for about 20 minutes until the warm glow of my family's house was long gone, and I saw the red and green vacancy sign of a roadside motel. The Oak Ridge Inn. It was faded and grim. It was perfect. I paid for the room in cash. The man at the counter barely looked up from the tiny television playing in the corner. I was just another anonymous traveler on Christmas night. The room was beige and smelled of stale cigarette smoke and pine-scented cleaner. The heater set into the wall buzzed loudly, churning out lukewarm air. I didn't take off my coat. I sat on the edge of the bed, on the rough, patterned bedspread. The silence was enormous. It felt like a physical thing, pressing in on me from all sides. After the forced perfection of my mother's house, this beige, empty, ugly room felt like a sanctuary. It was honest. It wasn't pretending to be anything it wasn't. I sat there for a long time, maybe an hour. I just watched my breath fog up in the cold air. The room was freezing. I wasn't crying. I was past crying. I was in a place beyond that. It was a cold, quiet place, a place of numbers and facts. I pulled out my phone. The battery was at 43%. I opened my budgeting app. I did this every month. It was part of my routine. I was a financial consultant after all. I managed multi-million-dollar accounts for other people. It was time I managed my own. I scrolled to the category I had labeled family. I tapped it. The list of transactions scrolled on and on. It was a river of my money, flowing in only one direction, away from me. December 20th, Zelle transfer to Helen Hayes, $600. Memo, groceries. December 18th, Nordstrom, $480. Sophie's sweater. December 15th, payment to Hayes Mortgage, $950. Memo, monthly help. December 12th, Amazon, $350. The espresso machine. December 5th, transfer to Sophie Hayes, $400. Memo, car payment. December 1st, transfer to Robert Hayes, $250. Memo, utilities. And that was just December. I kept scrolling. November, October, September. For years, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. Love had become a ledger. I realized I wasn't just a financial consultant. I was an underwriter. I was the sole underwriter for the Hayes Family Experience, a production I wasn't even allowed to sit down and watch. I was funding the play, buying the costumes, paying the actors, and they had just kicked the producer out of the theater. A cold, clean anger started to burn in my stomach. It wasn't a hot, loud anger. It was quiet and methodical. It was the anger of a balance sheet that didn't add up. I sat up straight. I opened my banking app. I found the recurring transfers. Transfer to Robert and Helen Hayes, $950, scheduled for the first of every month. I pressed edit. I pressed cancel recurring payment. A little box popped up. Are you sure? Yes. The click of the button echoed in the quiet room. I went to the next one. Transfer to Sophie Hayes, $400, scheduled for the 5th of every month. Cancel. Are you sure? Yes. I went to my credit card app. I saw the shared account. Sophie was an authorized user. For emergencies, she had said. Apparently, a $480 cashmere sweater was an emergency. I went to manage users. I saw her name, Sophie Hayes, remove user. This action is permanent and will cancel their card immediately. Confirm click. I went to my streaming services, the family plan. My entire family, including Uncle David, was on my Netflix, my Hulu, my HBO Max. I logged in, settings, account, sign out of all devices. Click. I changed the password. Something new, something I wouldn't remember giving them if they asked. Each click felt like striking a match. An article I had read once said that each click sounds like a match, not to burn, but to see clearly. That was wrong. It was absolutely to burn. I was burning the ledger. I was burning the lines of credit. I was burning the bridges. I was setting fire to the whole rotten one-sided contract. And in the light of that fire, I could finally see. I was free. I had been holding up their entire lives. I was the central pillar, and I had just walked away. The house was going to collapse, and the part of me that had been trained since birth to fix things, to be the responsible one, screamed in protest. They won't know what to do. They'll be ruined. A new thought, sharp and cold, cut through the panic. Not my problem. I had no husband, I had no kids. My mother was right about that. I had a good job. She was right about that too. But she was wrong about responsibility. My responsibility was to myself. I had just been neglecting it. I turned off the phone. I took off my coat, my boots, my wet socks. I crawled under the thin, beige bedspread. The heater buzzed. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I fell into the clean, empty, dreamless sleep of a person who had finally put down a weight she was never meant to carry. The next morning, I woke up to the buzz of the motel's wall heater. For a few seconds, I had no idea where I was. I saw the thin gray light of a snow-heavy sky peeking through a gap in the cheap curtains. I saw the ugly beige walls, and then it all came flooding back. My seat was taken. It's just the core family. My car in the snowy parking lot, my canceled credit cards. I had slept for hours, but I didn't feel rested. I just felt on the other side of something. I got up, the floor cold under my feet. I went to the small stained counter and used the single-cup coffee machine, which produced a weak, brownish water that smelled vaguely of burnt plastic. I didn't care. I drank it black, standing by the window and peering out at the highway. Everything was quiet, muffled by the snow. It was Christmas morning. I had absolutely nowhere to go. My entire family was 5 miles away, probably opening the gifts I had paid for. I wondered if they had even noticed I was really gone, or if my mother had just told everyone I wasn't feeling well and had gone up to my room. Then at 9:02 a.m., the knock came. It wasn't a Merry Christmas knock. It was a hard, fast, angry sound. Rap, rap, rap. My heart didn't just jump, it seized. It stopped cold. I didn't move. I just stood there, my hand wrapped around the flimsy hot cup. They can't know I'm here. I paid in cash. This is a town full of motels. There's no way. Rap, rap, rap. Louder this time. Clara, I know you're in there. Open this door. It's freezing out here. It was my mother's voice, not her bright hostess voice. This was her real voice, the one I heard when I broke a dish as a child or got a B on a report card. It was hard and it was furious. My blood turned to ice. They hadn't come to apologize. They hadn't come to find me because they were worried. They had come because they were angry. I put the cup down, my hand now shaking. I walked to the door and looked through the tiny, distorted peephole. I saw 2 figures, blurred and warped by the cheap glass. My mother, Helen. her face a mask of pinched rage, her nice Christmas coat pulled tight around her. And behind her, shrinking into herself, was Sophie. My sister wasn't looking at the door. She was staring at the ground, at the snow, at anything but me. She was the very picture of shame. I unhooked the chain. I turned the deadbolt. I opened the door. The cold air hit me like a slap. My mother stood there, her hair a mess, snow dotting her shoulders. She didn't say, "Merry Christmas." She didn't say, "Are you okay?" She just pushed past me into the room, bringing the smell of her expensive perfume and the freezing cold with her. "What in God's name do you think you're doing, Clara?" Sophie shuffled in behind her, still refusing to look at me. "Get out," I said. My voice was so quiet it surprised even me. My mother, who was surveying the shabby room like it was a crime scene, spun around. "What did you say?" I said, "Get out." "I will not." "What is wrong with you? You embarrassed all of us. You ruined Christmas. You just walked out." There was no place for me to sit, I said. It was the simplest, truest sentence I had ever spoken. My mother threw her hands up in exasperation. "Oh, for heaven's sake! Is that what this is about? A chair? A simple chair? We would have found you one. You were rude. You were selfish." And then, her voice dropping, she got to the real point. "And you turned off the money." Ah, there it was. It was never about the walkout. It was never about me. It was about the money. "The mortgage payment," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "It didn't go through. It was declined. And Sophie's card declined at the gas station. How dare you?" I looked at Sophie. She finally met my eyes, her face pale. She looked like a lost child. "You tried to buy gas?" I asked her. She nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. "Clara, I didn't know." "You have no husband, Clara," my mother suddenly shouted, her face turning a blotchy red. "You have no children. You have this big important job in Portland, and you make all this money. What else is it for?" She had actually said it. The quiet, unspoken rule of my entire life, spoken out loud in a cheap motel room. "It is your responsibility to support this family, to support your sister, to help your father." "My responsibility," I said, feeling a strange, cold calm settle over me. The shaking had stopped. My responsibility was to be a daughter, not a bank. You turned me into a bank. "How dare you speak to me that way?" "No," I said. I held up my hand, and for the first time in my life, she stopped talking. She had never been interrupted. She stopped, her mouth half open in pure, unadulterated shock. "It was never my responsibility," I said, my voice as flat and gray as the sky outside. "It was my choice. I chose to help. I chose to pay for things, because I thought it meant I was part of the family." I looked at Sophie. "I paid for your car. I paid for your sweater. I paid for the mortgage on the house I wasn't allowed to sit in." Sophie started to cry, silent, ugly tears running down her face. "Clara, I'm so sorry. Mom said Mark was the new man of the house and there wasn't room for both of you." I finished the sentence for her. She just sobbed. My mother's face had gone from red to a strange, mottled white. She could see she was losing. She saw her power was gone. The money was gone. "You will regret this, Clara," she whispered, her voice laced with venom. "You will be a very lonely old woman. Family is all that matters. And you are throwing yours away over a chair." "You threw me away first," I said. "You just didn't have the guts to tell me to my face. You had to show me. You had to give my seat to a stranger." I walked to the door and opened it wide. The cold wind whipped into the room. "Get out," I said again. My mother just stared at me, her whole body rigid. She was calculating, trying to find a new angle, a new way to hurt me, and she was coming up with nothing. I had taken all her weapons. She grabbed Sophie by the arm. "Fine, we're going." Sophie stumbled after her. As my mother walked out, Sophie paused in the doorway. She looked at me, her face a wreck of tears and snot. "Clara, the crumble? What about it? It was so good. I ate some last night." The words were so small, so pathetic, so completely beside the point. I just stared at her. "Get out, Sophie." She flinched as if I'd slapped her and hurried out the door. My mother, from the walkway, had one last thing to say. "You'll be back. You'll come crawling back when you have no one." I didn't say anything. I just closed the door. I turned the deadbolt. The click was loud and final. I hooked the chain. The rattle of the metal was solid. Freedom. It didn't feel like joy. It didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like an amputation. It was necessary. It was life-saving. But God, it hurt. I leaned my forehead against the cheap, cold wood of the door. I listened to their footsteps fading in the snow, the sound of a car door slamming, an engine starting, and then silence. It was just me, and the snow, and the quiet. I went back to the window and opened the curtain. I watched their car pull out of the lot, spraying gray slush. Then I opened the door again, just a crack. "Sophie!" I called out. The car stopped. Sophie looked out the passenger window, her face suddenly hopeful. "The crumble dish?" I shouted, my voice carrying in the cold air. "The one you have." It was Grandma's. "I want it back." "Leave it on the porch at the house. I'll get it before I leave town." Her face fell. She nodded, a tiny, miserable movement. I closed the door, this time for good. I stayed in that motel for 3 more days. I couldn't drive. The snow was bad, but mostly I was just hollow. I was in a state of shock. I ordered bad pizza. I watched terrible daytime television. I was a ghost in my own life. I was waiting, though I didn't know what for. On the 3rd day, my phone buzzed. I had been ignoring their calls, dozens of them. Frantic, angry calls from my mother, crying, incoherent voicemails from Sophie, and most surprisingly, a few stiff, awkward, "Clara, call your father" messages from my dad. I had deleted them all. But this wasn't a call. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. "Clara, this is Mark." My blood ran cold. Mark, the man in my chair, the man who was the catalyst for this whole nightmare. I was ready to block him. "Don't block me." I left. I read the words again. I left. "I'm not with Sophie anymore. I'm back in Denver. I'm sorry. I didn't understand what I was walking into." I stared at the text. "He left? He left Sophie?" Another text came through. "Your family is a lot. After you left Christmas, your mom, she was awful. To me, to Sophie, to everyone. And when the money shut off, it got worse." I didn't know what to feel. "I'm not texting to get back with you or anything weird," he wrote. "I'm texting because I have something. I think you deserve to hear it. It's why I left." A second later, an audio file appeared. "Christmas dinner, MP3. My heart was pounding. What was this? I didn't want to listen. I was so tired of their drama, so tired of their words. But he had written, "You deserve to hear this." I pressed play. I put the phone to my ear. At first, all I heard was noise, the sound of silverware on china, the clinking of wine glasses, laughter. It was my father's laugh. And then the voices came through, clear as day, as if the phone had been sitting right on the table. My mother, Helen. Can you believe her? Just walking out, in the middle of dinner? Honestly, she's probably just sulking in her car, hoping we'll come running out to beg her to come back. as if we ruined her wedding day or something. My father, Robert. Helen, that's enough. Helen, enough? Robert, I'm not the one who ruined Christmas. She did. With her dramatics. It's always something. If it's not her job, it's her apartment, or how she's so tired. My sister Sophie. She'll get over it. She always does. She just likes the attention. Remember that time in high school when she... I couldn't hear the rest. The sound of their voices talking about me, laughing about me, while I was right outside. And then, the worst part. My father. His voice was lower, conspiratorial. He must have leaned in. Robert, I'll tell you one thing. It's a lot quieter. At least we can have one holiday without her constant lectures. Dad, did you pay this? Dad, you shouldn't eat that. Dad, you need to save more. It's exhausting. A fist made of ice was squeezing my heart. Lectures. My help, my concern, my terror that he was going to lose the house. He saw them as lectures. He was relieved I was gone. There was a murmur of agreement, and then a new voice. Mark's. Jesus, you guys are... wow. You know she can probably hear all of this, right? She just walked out the door. Silence. A total, dead, absolute silence. The clinking stopped. The laughing stopped. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound on the recording was the faint strain of Frank Sinatra singing in the background. Then Helen's voice, sharp and quiet. Mark, turn that off. The recording ended. I lowered the phone. I sat on the edge of the ugly beige bedspread. I did not cry. I had no tears left. The hurt was gone. The sadness was gone. All that was left was the truth. It was clean. It was sharp. It was final. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. They didn't just not want me there. They despised me. They despised the very parts of me that had kept them afloat. My lectures were me. Up at 3 a.m., with spreadsheets open, moving my own money to cover their debts. My dramatics were me, heartbroken that they didn't have a place for me. My mother's spite, my sister's casual cruelty, my father's deep, cutting resentment. It was all there, in a 90-second audio file. Mark had given me a gift. It was the most terrible, most liberating gift I had ever received. He had given me my freedom back. He had erased any lingering shred of my guilt. They weren't my victims. I was theirs. And now, the victim was walking away. I breathed in the stale motel room air. It felt like the first clean breath I had taken in my entire life. I deleted the audio file. I didn't need to save it. It was burned into my memory. I blocked Mark's number. I didn't need to thank him. His involvement was over. I stood up. I went into the bathroom and looked at the pale, tired, hollow-eyed woman in the mirror. "Okay," I whispered to her. "Now we can go." I packed my small overnight bag. I checked out of the motel. I stopped at the house. It was dark. Just as I'd asked, sitting on the snow-covered porch was my grandmother's crumble dish. I grabbed it. I put it in my car, and I started the long 9-hour drive back to Portland. I didn't stop, I just drove. I'd been back in Portland for a week of pure, unadulterated silence. My apartment had never felt so safe. It was my fortress. It was clean, it was quiet, and it was all mine. The light in Portland, even in winter, is a soft, gray, cleansing light, and it felt like it was washing the grit of that Michigan Christmas off me. I had blocked all their numbers. My phone was blissfully quiet. No more angry texts, no more crying voicemails. I had started the process of building a new life. I was looking at my own finances, my real finances, and realizing just how much I had. Without them, I was wealthy. I had been leaking thousands of dollars a month, and now the dam was sealed. I was sitting on my sofa, drinking coffee and looking out at the river when my phone rang. It was an unknown number with a Michigan area code. My first instinct was to ignore it. It had to be them. But what if it wasn't? What if it was a real emergency? Against my better judgment, I answered, "Hello, Clara? Clara, thank God. Oh my God, Clara, you have to help us." It was my mother. She was screaming, hysterical. "Mom, what's wrong? What happened?" My body tensed, my old familiar role as the fixer snapping right back into place. "It's the house. The house, Clara. There was a fire." My blood went cold. "What? Is everyone okay? Is Dad okay? Is Sophie?" Yes, we're fine," she said, sobbing. We got out. The fire department came. But the kitchen, Clara, the kitchen is gone. It's all gone. The smoke damage. Everything is ruined. We have nothing. I took a deep breath. Is everyone safe? Is anyone hurt? I told you, yes, we're safe. But we have nowhere to go. The insurance, they said it will take weeks. We're at a hotel, Clara. A horrible, cheap hotel. We need help. We need a little help until the insurance clears. A little help. There it was. The trigger. The magic words. I waited. I let her cry. I let the silence stretch. "Clara, are you there? Did you hear me? We have nothing." "I'm here, Mom." My voice was calm. "Well, thank God. I can give you the hotel information. You can wire the money, or a credit card, whatever is easiest." "Mom." "What?" she said, her voice sharp with impatience. "Is everyone physically, completely, 100% safe and unharmed?" "Yes, I told you. But That's good," I said. And I hung up the phone. I put it down on the coffee table. It rang again immediately. The same number. I let it ring until it stopped. A new text message appeared from the same number. My mother. "Did you just hang up on me?" "Clara, this is an emergency. We have no money. We have no food. The hotel wants to kick us out. Your father is a mess. You have to help us." I looked at the messages. I felt nothing, no pity, no anger, just a quiet, empty stillness. The woman who had screamed at me in a motel room, who had told me I was useless without a husband, who had resented my help, was now demanding it. I opened my banking app. I found her old blocked Zelle account. I unblocked it. I sent her a new transfer. Amount $50. Memo for consistency. I sent it, then I reblocked her. My phone immediately buzzed. A new text from a new number. Sophie's. She must have gotten a new phone. "Sophie, $50? Is this a joke?" "Sophie." "Clara, the house burned down. What is wrong with you?" I looked at the text. I thought about the table. I thought about my seat. I thought about Mark and my uncle's new girlfriend. I thought about the 6 people at the table and the one person standing in the doorway. I typed a reply. Me. I was told my seat wasn't worth a plate. I figured $50 was more than generous for a place I'm not even allowed to sit. Her reply was instant. "Sophie, you're being cruel." I looked at her words. "You're being cruel." I thought about the recording. I thought about them laughing at me. I typed my last reply. Me? "No, I'm being consistent. You wanted me to be core family only. You got it. I'm not. This is not my emergency. Don't contact me again." I blocked her number. I blocked the number from the hotel. I sat back. I picked up my coffee. It was still warm. The house burned down. Is everyone okay? Yes, that's all that mattered. The rest was just finance, and I was no longer their financial consultant. I had given them exactly what my seat at the table was worth. To them, it was worth nothing. To me, it was worth $50. I looked out at the river. It was calm. And for the first time, so was I. The fire was the end of their calls. I had finally, truly burned the bridge. The $50 was an insult so profound that it had silenced them. The cruelty, as Sophie had called it, was a language they understood. It was the end of the line. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 2 weeks went by. 2 weeks of peace. I was sleeping. I was eating. I was even starting to look at my own portfolio, thinking about a vacation. A real one. Somewhere warm. Then I got a text. It was Brent. My heart sank. I thought I had blocked him. I must have missed one of his numbers. Brent, Emily. I know you blocked me. I'm using a friend's phone. I'm not trying to bother you. I am in Denver. But I found something. You need to see this. It's bad. I was so tired. I was so sick of their drama. Me. What is it, Brent? Brent, it's not them. It's me. When I was with Grace, she was helping me with my finances. She had me invest in some things. I was stupid. I'm trying to clean up the mess. And I found this. An image file appeared. It was a credit card statement. My stomach dropped. The name on the card was Emily G. Carter. My middle initial is not G, it's M. Emily M. Carter. But the address was my parents' address in Colorado. And the balance? Balance due? $8,452.19. Brent. She told me this was your card, the one you used to help the family. She said your middle initial was G for giver? I know. God, I'm so stupid. She was using it to pay for our wedding deposit, the venue, the caterer. I'm so sorry, Emily. I think they opened it in your name. I stared at the text. I was not angry. I was not shocked. My first honest-to-God thought was, of course they did. This was the next logical step. The bank, me, had closed. So they just printed new money. They had stolen my identity, my mother's. You have no husband, no kids. Grace's. She'll get over it. My father's lectures. It all clicked into place. I wasn't a person to them. I was a resource, a name on a social security card, a credit score to be plundered. I typed back to Brent. Me, thank you for this. Do you have the full account number? Brent, yes. He sent it. Me, don't contact me again. Brent, yes, of course. I'm sorry. I blocked his number. I was perfectly calm. My training as a financial consultant took over. This was not a family drama. This was fraud. I put my hair up in a ponytail. I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop. First, I called the credit card company. Yes, I'd like to report a fraudulent account. I sat on hold for 20 minutes. The hold music was a terrible, tinny version of a pop song. I just breathed. Ma'am, can you verify your social security number? I did. And your mother's maiden name? I did. The irony did not escape me. Okay, Miss Carter. It looks like this account was opened 3 months ago. The address on file is in Colorado. I have not lived in Colorado for 10 years. I did not open that account. Okay, ma'am. We will have to freeze the account and open an investigation. You will need to file a police report. Of course, I said. Send me the paperwork. Click. Second, I called the local police department in my old hometown. Yes, I'd like to file a report for identity theft and financial fraud. The officer on the phone was bored. Against who? My parents, Paul and Diane Carter, and my sister, Grace Carter. There was a pause. The boredom was gone. Ma'am? They opened a fraudulent credit card in my name. The balance is over $8,000. I have the statements and the account number. I am happy to cooperate fully. The officer took my information. He told me a detective would be in touch. Click. Third, I called a lawyer, a bulldog lawyer in Colorado that I found online. I paid his retainer over the phone with my own credit card. I don't want them in jail, I said. I'm not trying to ruin their lives. What do you want, Miss Carter? He asked, his voice gravelly. I want the debt cleared. I want a legal binding document that says they can never contact me, my place of employment, or any future family I may have ever again. I want a restraining order based on financial malfeasance, and I want them to know that I am holding the police report. If they ever break that agreement, I file it. I want it to be over. I can do that," he said. Click, I was done. I had made my calls. The system was in motion. It was 11 a.m. I had just finished my coffee when my phone lit up. A new number, a new text. From Grace. Grace, a lawyer. Grace, a police report. Grace, you are going to send Dad to jail? After the fire? You are a monster. Grace, you don't have to make this worse. My fingers were not shaking. They were perfectly still. I typed my reply. Me. I'm not making it worse, Grace. Me. I'm ending it. I blocked her number. My phone was quiet. I looked at the paperwork on my desk. The fraud alerts. The lawyer's retainer. Justice, I realized, doesn't roar. It doesn't scream. It just clicks quietly through paperwork. It's a series of phone calls and forms and checks in a box. It was the most satisfying final set of clicks I had ever made. The debt was not just $8,000. The debt was 34 years, and the account was finally permanently closed. The snow in Michigan was replaced by the rain in Portland. The rain washed the city clean. And then finally the rain stopped. It was March. The first weak, watery sunlight of a Pacific Northwest spring was pushing through the clouds. I had opened my windows. The air smelled of damp earth and coffee and the salt from the river. It was the smell of peace. My life had become very, very quiet, and I had learned to love the quiet. The legal battle had been short and brutal. My lawyer had been, as promised, a bulldog. Faced with a police report and ironclad proof of fraud, my family had folded instantly. They signed the papers. They signed the agreement. They were legally and finally out of my life. The $8,000 in debt was charged back to them to be paid out of whatever insurance money they eventually got from the fire. It was not my problem. My father had tried to break the agreement once. He left me a voicemail. He must have used a friend's phone. I saw the Michigan number, and my first instinct was to delete it, to call my lawyer. But I listened. I stood in my kitchen, the March sunlight warming my face, and I listened to my father's voice. It was not the loud, booming voice from the head of the Christmas table. It was a small, broken old man's voice. Clara, it's Dad. I know I'm not supposed to call. I know, please don't tell the lawyer. I needed to say, you were right. He was crying. I had never heard my father cry. You were right, he choked out. I treated you like a safety net, not a daughter. I took your lectures, and I was ashamed, and I was angry at you for seeing it. I'm sorry, Clara. I'm so sorry. The voicemail ended. I stood there for a long time. I saved the message, not to replay it, not to hold on to it, just to remember that the truth had finally, at the very end, found its way home. It was an apology, yes, but it was thin, and it was for him, not for me. He was apologizing to clear his own conscience. But it was at least the truth. I would never speak to him again, and that was okay. The apology was not a bridge. It was just a period at the end of a very long, very terrible sentence. That evening, I was in my kitchen. The air was soft. I had music playing, something quiet. I took my grandmother's crumble dish out of the cupboard, the one I had driven all the way back from Michigan, the one Sophie had left for me on the burned-out porch. I had scrubbed it clean. It was a simple ceramic dish, the only thing from that house, from that life, that I had wanted. I washed it again, slowly, just feeling the warm water on my hands. I was washing away the last of it, the last of the snow, the last of the anger, the last of the hurt. The apple crumble I never got to share. The seat that was never mine. I dried the dish. I put it away. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one that only seats two. It was perfect. I opened my notebook, the one I had been using to track my finances, to track the legal case. I turned to a new, clean page, and I wrote one final line. The debt is paid. All of it. The financial debt, the emotional debt, the debt I had been told I owed them since birth, paid in full. I closed the book. Outside, the world was soft and new. The cherry blossoms were starting to think about blooming. I had spent my whole life trying to earn a seat at their table. Now I was finally, peacefully sitting at my own. I had no husband, I had no kids, I had a good job, and for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself, and it was enough.